Yeah, I sometimes use a Sid Banks quote where he said, who we are is pure consciousness uncontaminated by our personal thinking.
Mm,
Which doesn't mean you're not going to have thinking or you shouldn't think or thinking is bad. Of course you're going to think. A lot of thinking is really helpful, but a lot of it isn't. And I rarely meet people who think too little, contrary to popular opinion. I meet
yeah.
a lot of people who think too much.
I'm kind of sitting here laughing at myself as well, Michael, because I was thinking too much this morning when I woke up thinking, I've got to interview Michael Neal today.
Oh, dear God, man, I feel for you.
But you get lost in thought. And then I started thinking about all of the other things in the day, and I could feel the overwhelm come up. And I was able to snap out of it simply because I noticed my thinking. I began noticing what I noticed. And then
Yeah.
I had a giggle because I thought I'm going to be speaking to Michael, who's going to remind me of all of this anyway.
But that's the beauty is we get reminded of it throughout the day. Once you get eyes for it, you'll see it everywhere. That's the fun of it. It's the kind of classic metaphor is how would you explain water to a fish? Well, you can't. Well, partly because I don't think fish get much, but that's we live in this. We were born into this thought thing and life thing, and so we tend not to notice it because it's always been a part of our world. But once you start noticing it, you'll see it all. You'll see it everywhere. I remember driving down the street. Actually, I was in the back of a cab in London years ago, and I'd been reading a lot about this idea that everybody is living in their own separate thought-created reality, and they just think that we think we're all in the same reality, which is why we don't understand how some people can behave the way they behave. Yet in their reality, it makes perfect sense. It just makes no sense in ours. And I thought it was a neat idea. Like I thought, oh, okay, cool. But that day, I remember we were driving and it was a quiet morning and I was just in a kind of nice place. I looked and there was a woman coming out of a council house trying to get a stroller set up for her baby. And I could see she wasn't there. Like she was in her head, but she was still going through the motions. I mean, it wasn't unsafe. And then as we drove, I just saw everybody, if not on their phones, on a phone in their head, like
Yeah.
checking out anything. And every now and again, you'd see somebody who seemed to actually be where they were. Now, again, it's not, yes, must be more mindful. It's just once you start to see that's how we live, a lot of life makes more sense. And then you get to make some different choices if you want to. Because honestly, it's almost not a choice once you notice it. It's like, I'll sometimes describe it as if I've got a pain in my leg and I suddenly notice that I am repeatedly stabbing myself in the leg with a fork, I don't need therapy. You might argue. I don't need years of practice to undo the habit. The second I see that, oh, good Lord, what am I doing? It's done. I'm not going to do it again until the next time. And then as soon as I notice it again, I'm not going to do it anymore. We are so much more adaptable than we have been told we are. There's all this research about it takes 30 days to change a habit, 45 days to change a habit, 60 days to change a habit. Bullshit. It takes one insight. I've worked with so many people who dealt with addiction who just talk about a discrete moment where they suddenly got, oh shit, this is rat poison. This is not good for me. This is genuinely killing me. Done. Yes, it took support. It took time. But the moment of insight was when it changed. An analogy I've used for years because it's so obvious to most people is if you go to work the same way, you've gone to work the same way every day for 30 years, and somebody shows you a shortcut that gets you there in half the time and it's much prettier, Do you need a 30-day reprogramming period before you start going to work the new way? No. It's immediate. And sure, you might get distracted one day, be in your head and start out the old way. And then you'll remember and you go, oh, well, because you know you'll take the better way the next time. That's us. We are one thought away, one insight away, one notice away from behaving completely differently, from experiencing differently. And to me, that's why it's hard for me to get too worked up about anyone's problems, including my own, because I know that, like, one of the actual big moments for me where I really saw this was I had a friend and her husband had a heart attack, and you know their health insurance here in America, you know, it was very much dependent on the husband's job, and they had a kid. They have a kid who had some serious health problems from birth, and you know, she was sad, she was scared, she was upset. She asked if we could get together for lunch, and I said absolutely. And this was in the evening, so it was going to be the next day. Well, between that phone call and lunch, a bunch of stuff went wrong in my business. Like I just had a bunch of fires to put out, and I was really worked up and in my head, and you know, the rain was pounding on me, and I was going to cancel, but you know that other voice in your head, the quiet one, the one that kind of goes, it's okay, just it's all right, you're fine, just right. That voice it was like, just go, just be with her. You don't have to be great, just be. I was like,
Mm.
I can do that. So I went to lunch, and she poured her heart out to me, probably 45 minutes to an hour. You know, all her fears, all her worries. And then, totally not professional coach, you know, Michael, I just dumped on her for half an hour about all the shit I was dealing with. And it was, so we got to the end, like we were both spent. And I had a thought, and I said to her, you know, the only difference between you and me right now is you think this is still going to look as bad tomorrow. And I know it could look like anything tomorrow. And it was funny. She reached out to me that evening, and it had already changed for her. She
Mm.
was already seeing it different. She was seeing possibility. Yes, her husband still had a heart attack. Yes, there was still all sorts of stuff that had to be dealt with. But she was no longer stuck in a made up reality where he was dead and they were losing their health insurance and they were going to be on the street and their child was going to die. And like she realized, oh God, I'm making all of that up and I'm scaring the hell out of myself. And honestly, scaring the hell out of yourself while you're trying to deal with something real, not a great strategy.
Mm.
Doesn't help. And yet it's just a habit that most of us have. But we don't need to be a victim of it. You know, we are one fresh thought, one insight, one noticing away from a whole different experience.